All right, welcome back. Today on the podcast, I have Matthew Query. Matthew Query.
It's fine. It's difficult.
Yeah, and Matthew is, he's in Charlotte here, and we'll get into his story a little bit more, but he's the owner of Freedom Contracting Services and has a lot of experience in contracting or construction field. So, Matthew, welcome.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks. Honored to be here.
Yeah, sorry, I kind of... My tongue twister thing with the name.
It's fine. I've been called a lot worse. So
kind of like I've mentioned before, the format is to talk about the guest's life and business or expertise. So if you could share a little bit about your life and maybe go like as far back as you want to, but
sure.
Teenage years, like who were you back then?
Yeah, sure. So I was born and raised in Indiana. I graduated from Purdue University. Mm-hmm. During that time, I was actually in the Indiana Army National Guard and was deployed in 2003 with the 101st Airborne, and spent a year in Iraq. So that kind of delayed my Purdue graduation quite a bit. Mm-hmm. But finished up there and actually started working for a large national home builder, and in December 2005 got laid off. Mm-hmm. That was kind of the start of the housing crash up there anyway. And but my boss said, "But I like you." I'm like, "Thanks a lot," but I still don't have a job. So they actually took me to a couple different other markets. Mm-hmm. Which was a nice benefit of working for a national home builder, and ended up coming to Charlotte in January of 2006, and coming from Indiana down to Charlotte in January when Indiana is just cold and gray, cloudy all the time, and you come here and it's blue, bright blue skies, still maybe a little chilly, but they took me to Ballantyne, of course. So it's like the nicest place in Charlotte, or one of the nicest places. And I'm like, man, this place exists. And I wasn't tied to anyone, even though all my family's up there. I didn't have any family here. Mm-hmm. I made the decision to move down here.
Were you single at the time? Or
I
you
was.
Married?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I met my wife a year later. I was doing country line dancing lessons at Coyote Joe's.
Okay.
So met her there, and 4 months later I proposed, and within a year we were married, and I stayed. And she's local, actually. She's from the Charlotte area. Mm-hmm. So I actually live now in Rock Hill and operate Freedom Contracting, and I've been self-employed since 2016, really. But that's kind of my background, how I got here anyway.
Yeah. So back when you were in high school, like, who were you like? Were you an extroverted type of a kid? Yeah. Were you like the life of the party, or the opposite? Or
Well, despite what you see today, I was actually pretty nerdy.
Okay.
Really, really. Even in like middle school, I was really nerdy. I was picked on a lot. Query's a queer. Don't repeat that. And my dad was actually dean of boys. Mm-hmm. And so I had people that came up to me that I didn't even know. They're like, "I hate your dad and I hate you too." I'm like, "Okay, thanks. That's great. I don't know who you are." But I kind of just went to high school, and I remember somebody coming up to me like, "Query's a queer." Blah, blah. I'm like, "Bro, we're in high school now. Get over that." And it just kind of stopped. Mm-hmm. And I was in sports. I was in band. I did cross country, swimming, and track. And I played the trombone. Still play the trombone. And so high school, I wouldn't call myself life of the party. I had a core group of like 5 friends. 3 of those guys I'm still really, really close with today. And we talk frequently. We try to see each other at least once a year. Mm-hmm. And I feel really fortunate to have that. So, but yeah, kind of could blend in with whatever crowd but kind of just, I didn't really hang out with the jocks. I was more of a nerd. Like my idea of a good time at that time, I built my own CPU, my computer,
Okay.
and like I would literally take my CPU and this was back in the 90s, of course, take it to my friend's house and we would have LAN parties, LAN,
Yeah.
and we would play video games against each other, or we'd play Mario Kart on
Hmm.
Nintendo 64. And so, or we go to the movies. I was from a really small town, 20,000 people. And so like there wasn't a whole lot to do, but in a small town, you could get in a lot of trouble too.
Hmm.
And so I was really fortunate to be paired up with guys that were kind of similar in mindset and didn't really, getting drunk or high or whatever wasn't really the thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So you had a pretty well balanced kind of life at that time. You were working with computers, but you were also in sports and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
When you were swimming, what was your best? What were you specializing in as far as swimming?
So
As much
actually,
as you can specialize in high school.
yeah, yeah. Actually, when I first started, I was more of a distance swimmer, so I'd
Mhm.
swim the 500, um, the longer races. But actually, as my career progressed in high school, I got faster.
Mhm.
I really started putting in the work. I had a great coach, amazing coach, Rich Rutherford. I attribute a lot of success in life to, the discipline and stuff that I learned
Mhm.
from him, through him, and in my college or in my high school career. And I actually went to state in my junior year in the 200 free relay.
Okay.
So that was an amazing experience. And I was not the slowest guy on the team. I was the third fastest.
That's really good. I swam in
So,
high school also,
oh, cool.
and I was doing
Oh, nice.
diving and swimming. So yeah, I just remember that even before joining the swim team, I was trying to become a lifeguard.
Oh, yeah.
And as part of the course, you had to swim like 400.
Uh huh.
And I've never done it before. And that one time that I had to do it, like I felt like I was gonna die afterwards. For me, it was more like I'm more short distance
Yeah,
swimmer
sure. Yeah.
rather than long.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
but swimming was good.
Yeah.
Swimming was
Yeah. I love
really
it.
good.
I miss doing it.
Yeah. And then for track, were you running long distance
Yeah.
also?
Long
Or-
distance. Yeah. I
Okay.
only did track my freshman and sophomore year. No, that was cross country. I did track all 4 years.
Hmm.
I was never really great. I could handle the distance, but it seemed like I would always flop during the meets.
Hmm.
Like we would go practice, we would run 6 miles or more, and I would just be crushing everybody. And then we would go and we do a 3 mile race, and I would just die.
Were you trying to like do too much in the beginning of the race or something
I don't know. I think it really was mental.
in the mind?
I don't really have any other explanation, but
Hmm.
I remember my dad and me being really disappointed, and my coach being like, "What is wrong with you, Query?" Like, and even like some of the top guys on the team, they're like, "Bro, you're beating me during practice. Why aren't you winning?" So I don't know. Never could answer that.
There's a difference between practice and a race or the
There,
real. Like,
there is. So
but how do you think, like, being a long distance runner or swimmer, how do you think that translated into life for you?
like I said, I got a lot of self discipline from swimming. My swim coach, especially, I would say probably even starting in my sophomore year, but really my junior year, my senior year, I would be doing 2 a day practices, sometimes 3 a day.
Mhm.
There was a guy that I was friends with, and he was an amazing swimmer. He would get up and have a practice before the practice in the morning.
Wow.
And so I did that for a period of time where he'd get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, do some sort of practice, go to swim practice, go to school, and then come back and do afternoon practice. So those are really, really long days. But some of my fondest memories were, I go in to the pool and it's smooth as glass.
Hmm.
Nobody's been in it. The only sounds in there are the sounds of the jets pushing water into the pool. And then I jump in and it just cut through the water and there's nothing like it.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed that. I really liked it. So, and I was in really good shape. So I learned a lot of self-discipline um, during that time.
Yeah, I would think that especially long distance swimming or running, that it would like build your mindset
Yeah.
for the long term rather than short term. Because a lot of, especially today with short attention spans and things like that, everything's like instant gratification rather than like wait for some
Yeah.
reward.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you got Amazon Prime. I mean, you Grubhub, you literally can order stuff and it's delivered the same day in some cases. Like in Charlotte, we've got, Amazon Prime and
Hmm.
some stuff. I remember my wife telling me one time that she ordered, or her boss ordered, Haagen-Dazs ice cream, quarts of Haagen-Dazs ice cream, and it was delivered to their work and they
Yeah.
had it. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, our society feeds into that instant gratification. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, like during high school, when you decided to go to college, was that your decision? Were you like, did you seek guidance what you should do with your life at that time? Like, what
It's
was
funny
that
that
like?
you say that because I was on Robert Moore's podcast
Hmm.
and we kind of talked about a little bit of this as well. And I would say it was my decision to go to college. However, looking back on my life and where I'm at now, um, we are, or were, I think we're starting to get away from it a little bit, but we are conditioned to a certain standard.
Hmm.
Like even my 12-year-old daughter is asked, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? Well, and that changes every week, which is fine. But like, why can't that be, who do you want to be? Or what are you passionate about? Rather than what do you want to do?
Hmm.
Because I think, and I've just gone through this in my own life, somewhat of a midlife crisis. I would say like last summer, even kind of like, is this what I'm really supposed to do? And like, I feel like I'm really good at what I do, but things aren't turning out as the way I thought.
Hmm.
And this is what I've done my whole life in the I've been in the construction or home inspection industries. Just that's what I've done. And kind of coming to grips with that may not be what God has in store for me the second half of my life. I think a lot of people go through this midlife crisis if they don't have, even if they don't have God in their life.
Hmm.
Like, and I think a lot of it has to do with how we were set up almost for failure to 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 decide what you want to do for the rest of your life, quote unquote, when you're 16. I mean, I don't think that's fair.
Yeah.
And so like I obviously if you want to be a doctor, please go to college.
Right.
Right? There are some professions you absolutely must go to college, but there are so many things that people can do these days. I like you, for example. Like, I don't think that you necessarily have to go to college to do what you do, right? You may want to learn some business skills. You may want to, take some QuickBooks classes, what different things like that, relationship management, how to be an employer, things like that. But you don't have to go to a 4-year college to learn that stuff. You don't even
Right.
have to go to a 2-year college. You can get an internship and learn a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's so many other options and routes for people to go. And so that is kind of a loaded question to tie a bow on it because, yeah, it was my decision. But looking back on it, I enjoyed my career, and I enjoyed my time in college. But if I could do it all over again, knowing what I know now, like my kids, I don't talk to them about what college they're going to go to. I want to know what they're passionate about. And I also want to make sure that they know that because they're already being groomed for that. for going to college. And I'm like, no, you don't have to go to college. Like, you could join the military and get if you're going to do an education, you can get it completely paid for. You can go to a 2-year college and get your advanced studies done while you may be trying to figure out what you want to do. There's so many other options than just the standard, like, 4-year college.
Yeah.
So,
But how do you think, like having so many options, how do you think somebody who's 16 to 18 years old, how can they make, like, analyze it well enough for themselves to be like, okay, what do I really want to do, next few years, or
yeah.
what's my next step after high school?
Well, I think it starts even before 16 and 18. Like, just a perfect example, my 12-year-old daughter, again, she was asked kind of like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Right now, she says, I want to do contracting like my daddy, which is cool. That's nice. But what does that look like?
Yeah.
And so I need to take her on jobs with me. I want to show her what the headaches look like, show her what the wins look like, show her a, project and how it comes along. But my friend Kevin, who you may know from the Outpost, his daughter, they're going to do an internship with a local hairstylist. She owns a styling salon with multiple stylists and nail salon and whatnot. Because right now she's interested in being a hairstylist when she gets older. And I think that's great, but I think the more that you're exposed, because he is a painter, and he's brought her along to jobs doing painting. And I think earlier you start exposing them to different things, the better off they're going to be, because they may be passionate or really love something right now, but that may change. But I think the key is, like, making sure that they know that it's okay for that stuff to change. Like, I don't want my daughter to figure out what she wants to be when she grows up, because I'm 44 now, or almost 44, and I'm trying to figure out what I want to do when I grow up,
Yeah.
And I mean, 44, you look back, it's been 20 years or so since I've graduated college. And I'm like, wow, seems like a really long time, but I'm only 44. I mean, I hope to live a really long time. I could live another 40 years. And that's like double the amount of time that I've been in the professional world. And so there's so much to do, and it doesn't necessarily have to be, what you do to make money doesn't have to be what defines you necessarily. Make money, be a productive member of society, but ultimately do what you're passionate about. What's the Strom Thurmond quote?
Is it about
don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes your heart come alive, and go do that. Rough paraphrase.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I really relate with that. Obviously, you've heard the same message at the Outpost.
Right.
And so I think that if more people really asked what made their own hearts come alive, and they went and did that, regardless of what that was in the current season, I think the world would be a lot different.
Yeah.
So
how do you think, or what are some ways for somebody to find out what that is, what their passion is? Because it's like, if you're starting from a blank slate, you just don't know what you don't know. Like,
yeah.
So how do you know, like, what is like, for me, like, I feel like I'm in a similar boat as you. I've done different things in my life in terms of career, and I still feel like, is this really what I'm meant to do? Like, I think I'm supposed to be doing something different, but I don't know what it is. That's why I'm actually trying this podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. I love that.
But yeah, like, so how does one find their passion, or how does one find what makes them come alive?
Well, exposure to different things, right? So I love to network. I love networking. I think there are so many networking groups, and I'm in a BNI group, Business Networking International, I think is what it's called. But there are thousands of them all over the world, and I always recommend to people that I hear are either out of work or looking for work or just starting a business, like you need to go networking. Networking is the key to getting your name out there really quickly, because it's not necessarily about what you get, it's what you can give,
Hmm.
and then it automatically comes back to you. So exposure to those networking groups is one way. Um, I this may be a whole different topic, but I feel like Americans are uh, very privileged, and I think that that is also part of the problem in society, because the majority of Americans have never been to a third world country.
Hmm.
I've been fortunate enough to go to several third world countries, and I've seen the way other people live. And I think that the more eyes that are opened to how the rest of the world lives, the better off we are just as a whole. But it also may spark some sort of a passion in you. Um, there's so many people that have gone on mission trips that have come back and been like, oh, well, they don't have clean drinking water, so I'm going to start this foundation that brings clean drinking water to villages in Africa. I mean, even like the Tom's guy, right?
Hmm.
I'm going to start this Tom's shoes, and when you buy a pair of really well built Tom's shoes, they're going to send another pair overseas, and that's so. There's a lot of different ways, I think, to explore and to really find out what you might want to do. And I just think being, especially as you're raising children, or as I'm raising my children, I want to expose them to as much as possible. And that doesn't necessarily mean going on like a international mission trip, because my children 12 and under, four of them, that would be that would be really challenging. But I do hope that by being able to serve in our local community, doing outreach events and whatnot, our church does a great job of even doing many outreach events at the church. Like, hey, we're going to stuff bags for underprivileged children. Hey, we're going to package meals to send overseas. The little things like that, just to know that like there is something else other than how fortunate and blessed we are. Um, I think that I know that will broaden their horizon, their knowledge of, or just how they see the world.
Hmm.
And so I don't think it won't put them in a box, hopefully, of this is where you need to go and how you need to operate. We keep it open, you know?
Yeah. What would you say to somebody who's kind of struggling to figure out what their purpose or their passion is in life, and they're kind of like, well, you can do anything, but because you have so much that you could do, there's a paradox of choice. Like if you
Mm-hmm.
have too many choices, you can't pick something.
Mm-hmm.
And in some cases, it may even lead to like nihilism, or like, what's the point of it all anyway?
Mm-hmm.
Like if what can I really contribute to this world or to whatever? So like how would you say, what are some things that somebody can do to not get to that point, but like get to the opposite of being able to contribute and actually become something that's going to be beneficial to people around them and so on?
Yeah. I mean, that kind of goes back to like find out what makes your heart come alive. Um, what does that look like for people? I mean, it looks like a lot of different things. I mean, maybe you need to reconnect with your faith. I'm a Christian. You're a Christian. And so like I've connected it deeper in my faith. And I think that can really open a lot of doors. Whatever your faith is, if as long as it's not a faith in yourself, you know, um, I think that can really help. But um, I I used this story the other day with somebody. A few years ago, I one of the questions at the outpost is like, what do you like to do with your free time?
Mhm.
And I remember writing, I don't know anymore. So this is kind of a parallel. It's not exactly the answer to your question,
Yeah.
but kind of a, like, just to maybe get people thinking. I wrote, I don't know anymore, because I had been a father and a husband, and kind of let my personal life kind of go to the side,
Mhm.
you know. Used to do things and exercise and triathlons and, whatever. And so what God actually showed me or encouraged me to do was to start a men's group. And so I did. At that time, it was called Man Venture.
Mhm.
And so literally all we would do is I would plan different adventures, things that maybe I'd never tried before. It didn't last too long, unfortunately, but it kind of got the wheels moving.
Mhm.
Like I didn't want to be afraid of trying something that maybe I hadn't done before, or that didn't seem like that much fun, but just wanted to get out there and kind of experience the world. And so people can do that with the same thing with through networking events. And I'll go back to networking again. I mean, um, chamber events,
Mhm.
networking events. If you really are struggling with what do you want to do next, go to some free networking events, go to some free chamber events, get involved with your local community. There's a project I'm working on now that I'm not going to talk about, but that I hope will really, really benefit. I plan to have benefit my community and hopefully many other communities in the future. But that's kind of spawned from like where I've been, and God put this thing on my heart, and I was like, wow, that's I got pretty emotional about it. And I was like, wow, this is really something I feel like I'm called to do, and maybe even retire doing.
Hmm.
But it's a marrying of what I'm passionate about with, I need to make money,
Right.
but it's also um, providing an amazing resource for my community. And so I think when you can find those things, you're on the right track.
So, what are you passionate about? You mentioned just go ahead, have a sip.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I'm passionate about educating people.
Okay.
One of the reasons I love doing podcasts, I've done a lot of podcasts where I'm specifically talking about the home inspection industry, or the inspection and new construction industries. I am a licensed home inspector in North and South Carolina as well, and I'm a licensed South Carolina residential builder. And I've learned a lot from my contracting, from my inspections, all the different areas of construction I've worked in, warranty, obviously superintendent, building from the ground, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And people don't know what it's like. And we have a lot of system problems out there, and I like to educate people on obviously it would be beneficial for me if they called me as a home inspector and said, hey, I want you to inspect my home. But ultimately, like, I just want people to get a new home inspection. So, like, for example, that's one example. I love to educate people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very passionate about that. And so this new project kind of marries a little bit of education with I wouldn't say that I'm a great woodworker. I'm a good framer.
Mm-hmm.
I can do framing. I can do plumbing. I can do a little bit of electrical. Don't really do much HVAC. But this education part of me that I think both of my parents gave to me, because they're both educators, along with a passion for the trades in general, bringing those two things together, plus the fact that it's going to really benefit my community. It's like a win-win-win. So yeah, education and the trades. I was on put tools in schools the other day. You were, yes, you were on that too. Yes. and that was great. And I didn't tell him either about my project. I said, I got something in the works. You're going to really like it. And so, I really love what he's doing there because that's what we need. We need tools. I mean, I had shop class.
Yeah.
I mean, I was so cool to have shop class. I did all sorts of little things in shop class. And now, like my oldest is in middle school. There's no shop class. And it's either she does language immersion.
Mm-hmm.
But even with language immersion, it basically has completely eliminated her from being able to do a lot of what do you call them? Not extracurriculars, choice programs. And so like she does this wheel thing where she gets like one semester of like, computers and what we call home ec. I don't know what they call it today.
Mm-hmm.
Art, music, but she can't be in band. She can't be in choir because she doesn't have enough time. So I'm like, what are we teaching kids? We're putting them in school and we're having them sit down in classrooms and we're learning these things. But like, what about all the other stuff, the intangible things? I know I can't quote a study, but I've seen the studies and I know it's talked about that kids that are musically inclined or that invest themselves in music are a lot more likely to succeed in life just in general. Kids that are in sports, obviously that's helpful too.
Yeah.
But we don't even have these options anymore because it's either this or that.
Yeah, it seems like we specialize the activities of the kids too much and too early. Like even some people talk about like playing 3 sports versus just playing 1 sport when they're in high school.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can become really good at that 1 sport, but they kind of wear out certain motions in their body because of that 1 sport. I've heard people talk about that as well. Yeah, I think in trades, like we definitely need more. Like we have a shortage of workers. We have like workers that are not that great. They're just doing it to make a living, but that's not their passion. That's not what they're like really want to do. So then we have kind of subpar quality of labor and all that. I think definitely we need to figure out a solution for that.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, that's, have you ever heard of Mike Rowe?
Yes.
He's got an organization called Micro Works. That's kind of the same thing. He partnered with This Old House, one of my favorite programs. I love This Old House. I'm like an old soul when it comes. I remember sitting down with my grandfather watching This Old House. I love that program. My wife makes fun of me because I like to sit down and watch it, on Saturday mornings in my row with my coffee, watching This Old House. And, and my kids love to sit down and watch it now too. Because it's just interesting to see how things are put together. But that's like quality craftsmanship. And there's just part of me that just like aches to have something like that. And like that's part of my idea is trying to get that back.
Yeah, I'm just kind of writing down or jotting down an idea for that. Like I know there's definitely an opportunity in that area where there's a need. And there seems to be a lack of supply for that need. Yeah. And if there's a way to figure out how to supply it in a way that's financially makes sense and so on from all sides. Then
I even love what Home Depot does. Like I don't know how often they do it, but it's like maybe one Saturday a month or something. You'll walk in and there's just a ton of little kids running around.
Yeah.
But they've got their little Home Depot aprons and they're building like a birdhouse or something.
Right.
People are working with their hands.
I actually did that with my other son.
Yeah.
Or Julia did.
Yeah. It was fun, right? I mean, it was just an experience. It didn't force you to be a contractor, but you're working with your hands. You're seeing that you can create.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's the whole purpose of it. Like, wow. Like, I followed instructions and I did that. Like Legos. I love Legos. I still love Legos. I wish I had time to play with Legos.
Yeah.
But my kids love Legos because, again, it's just like it's creating. It doesn't have to be building. I mean, drawing, whatever, just something that's creative that that you can use what gifts God has given you and see it come before your eyes, you know?
Yeah. So having a location where kids or young adults or teenagers can come and do something with their hands, definitely would be
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Another thought is like maybe partnering up with some contractors that
Mm-hmm.
are good quality type of contractors,
Mm-hmm.
but may not be necessarily kind of have all the technology or whatever
Yeah.
as far as taking videos of their work, but maybe like partnering with them, bringing the cameras
Mm-hmm.
and documenting how to do things properly
Mm-hmm.
based on whatever they do.
Yeah.
There's I don't know if you heard of probably saw the Perkins brothers or
I
Perkins
didn't say
brothers.
that. No.
They're out there. They're kind of like do their own thing, like they build homes as well, and then they document the process or little tidbits of it.
Cool.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely a lot of opportunity there. So going kind of back to you,
Yeah. Oh.
you mentioned you moved here, you got married. What have you learned about life being married, like wife and husband interaction and so on?
A lot of things. I'm not always right. For one, usually I'm not. But I had it all wrong. I had a picture of what marriage would look like through movies,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and it was totally inaccurate. And my parents got divorced when I was 17, 18. And so, I had a really good childhood, but it's tough to think about that when you have that trauma in your life. And so I didn't really have a great example of what that looked like. My grandparents were a great example of that. But I almost felt cheated a little bit, because there was this, expectation that I had because I watched movies.
Mm-hmm.
I love movies.
So what in your mind, what was that like? Like, what did you think marriage was versus what it was or is?
Well, I mean, for one, it's like it's not an hour and a half session where they, you have a problem and a solution in an hour and a half.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have, and I would say it's not necessarily in movies. It's not necessarily with married people, but like sexual relationships, those are not well portrayed.
Mm-hmm.
Women and men are built differently, and the expectation I had of once I got married and how a sexual relationship would be didn't turn out to be what it was in the movies. And so there's just so many different things. My parents never talked to me about sex. So I had zero reference for what to expect, what things were like, how puberty was going to affect me, any of those things. I didn't have bad parents. They just didn't do it for whatever reason. And so just kind of going in, but then fortunately with my wife and when we met, we were both in a place where we were interested in deeper faith.
Mm-hmm.
And so like when we started dating, the moment I realized that I met the woman I wanted to spend my life with, she had come over. I invited her over for dinner. I was going to make her dinner at my house. And she looked at me dead in the eyes and was like, "I'll never spend the night with you." I'm like, oh, wow. Okay, well, this is a woman who knows what she wants. I mean, it may seem some stupid, right? But like it was totally different than other relationships I had experienced up until then.
Mhm.
And so like we had a solid rock where we had built our marriage. And not only that, but we invested in ourselves by getting in a couples groups, men's group. I've been leading a men's group now for 2.5 years, I think, or longer. Fire pit every Monday night, 8:30 to 10:30 p.m. So if you're in Rock Hill, come on over. I think, I know, not I think, but even having, and hopefully this isn't blasphemous, but even having a deeper faith and a belief in Jesus, I don't think that that's even enough to help sustain a marriage today.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have a community as well. And so I'm sure my wife would say the same thing. If we didn't have the community that we're in, connected to our church family, connected to our men's and women's groups, our couples groups, we wouldn't be together. Because I think where the enemy comes in and tricks us is that he says, well, you're the only one struggling with that problem. You're the only one whose marriage sucks. Look at Facebook. They look so happy.
Yeah.
They're doing traveling and like they look like they love each other and their kids are just well dressed. And they look, that's a bunch of malarkey.
Yeah.
Because it is not perfect. I want to invite people into my imperfect world. And so one of the reasons I think God uses me is because I just open my mouth. I'm bold enough to look like an idiot because I really don't care. Like, I want people to know that it's okay to struggle with stuff. I want people to know that marriage is imperfect, and we don't have a perfect marriage today. But we're working on it. We're fighting for it. And I couldn't do it with anybody else. I'm very difficult to live with sometimes. I'm opinionated and I want it my way. And so like, I don't know if that answered your question. I kind of went off on a tangent like I usually do,
right. But you brought up I think a good point, not I think, but yeah, it's a good point where like we believe in God, we believe in Jesus, that he came and he saved us. But even in the beginning, when God created Adam and Eve, everything was great when God created Adam.
Mm-hmm.
But God said it was not good that Adam was alone. He needed somebody on his level.
Mm-hmm.
So like, in my view, it's almost like God alone was still not enough for Adam. Mm-hmm. God had to create somebody else for Adam. Mm-hmm. So like, yes, we have a vertical relationship with God, but we do need the horizontal relationship with a spouse, with people, with community. Mm-hmm. Like that's just how God kind of created us. So so it's not like saying, oh, well, if it's this, then you're not a believer or whatever. Like it's both. We need both.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Eve was taken from Adam.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, in my own life, I realize it too, even though like I'm introverted and for the most part, I just like to keep to myself and that kind of thing. But I don't want to be alone forever by myself. I still need community, somebody to share life with. Maybe I don't need 1,000 people to be around me or whatever, or I don't want to be on stage or this and that.
Yeah.
But I still want like a group of people to do life with.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. You don't have to. Yeah, exactly right. You don't have to, like, if you're not outgoing like me, you don't have to come on a podcast. You don't have to be on the stage. I mean, do you, boo, right? Whatever they say nowadays. I'm not very socially conscious about what people use as words, but
yeah. So what about raising kids? Like what has that been like? What did you think having kids was going to be like, and what is it actually like?
I don't know that I really had an image of what fatherhood would be like. I knew that I wanted to be a father because I did have good parents despite what they did to each other. I had a great upbringing. I still have on my mom's side, very, very tight family. Um, and so I knew that I wanted to have kids. We talked about having kids, and before we were together, before we were married, so we kind of knew that we were on the same page. But having kids has been just an amazing blessing to me because, like, they make me better, and I think that God uses them, whether they know it or not, to show me that I'm doing better than what I think I am. Because I would say on a daily basis, at one point or another, I think I really suck at this. um, there was this weekend where my wife went out of town, and I had all four together, and we had done some things, but there was a lot of me yelling that weekend, a lot of kids fighting. It wasn't a great father weekend. Like, I didn't feel like I was winning. But one of the things we did over the weekend was I took him to IHOP.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, who cares? Took him to IHOP. We had breakfast for dinner. Well, my wife comes home and she's like, "Oh, hi kids, how are you? How was the weekend?" "Oh, Daddy took us to IHOP." Like, no mention of like the yelling or the fighting or the things that went on. It was just like, "Oh, we took an IHOP." And so in that moment, I was like, "Thanks, God, for that little blessing of like, I feel like I'm failing, but I'm just spending time, and what I'm excited about isn't what they're excited about." And so I stopped worrying so much about, "Oh, I've got to do this huge big event. We've got to, it's got to be we have to go to Disney. We got to go to Disney cruise," but whatever. Doing small stuff,
Mm-hmm.
Going camping. We like to go to Carowinds, which is fun. But small things is great. And they're just happy to spend time with me. And so, they've been involved with our church as well. We're heavily involved at our church volunteering. Most Sundays we volunteer, even though our church requests that we don't volunteer every Sunday. We still do. I love being around people, as you can tell. And so I get charged up from that. And so we serve pretty much every Sunday. And we get up at 6:30 in the morning on Sunday mornings, and we're at church by 7:30. And the kids are great with it. They're excited to come. The oldest three have made decisions to follow Jesus, and the two girls have been baptized. My oldest daughter is now serving in our kids' ministry, helping the 3-year-olds, and she is awesome at it and loves it. And so, like, raising kids and just involving them in the community and what we do, they're just kind of following in our footsteps.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not like, this is my way or the highway type of thing. It's more of we didn't say, "Well, you need to give your life to Jesus," or "You need to get baptized." We just exposed them to what it was like to be a follower of Jesus. This is what life is like. And they see the good, and they see the bad, and they see the ugly. And we work through all of that. And so it's been awesome to have kids and to grow with them and watch them grow. And we took the 3 oldest, my wife and I, 2 weeks ago now, I think, to the Blumenthal.
Mm-hmm.
And we watched Harry Potter. And I'm not a huge Harry Potter fan or whatever, but I love music, and they do too, and they like Harry Potter. And so we watched a symphony orchestra play the soundtrack live while we watched Harry Potter.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember my my wife, it was amazing. Like we were just laughing so much and just having a great time. And she just exclaimed, I love my family, and like, it's those little things, like, especially as they're getting older, we're getting to share more experiences with them because Lord knows babies are tough. Some people are built better for babies than others. My wife and I are not built so much for babies. They're cute, they're nice, but it's hard.
Yeah.
And so, one thing that God just reminded me of, when I became a father, I remember telling people, because they're like, "Oh, aren't you so tired?" And like, you're not really sleeping a lot, but God gives you an extra measure,
Mm-hmm.
and He did every time, for not sleeping and still having to go to work, And I wasn't the one feeding the baby either, Like I'm getting up sometimes to help or whatever, but I'm going to work and I'm still not sleeping well because the baby's crying or whatever. But God's gonna have your back in every instance, and He's proven to be faithful. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. What about kind of children being the mirror to who we are as parents, kind of showing our flaws?
Yeah.
Like for me, I feel like, and I have 4 kids as well, and
Yeah.
each one is different. They have their own individual personality and so on. But one will have a certain trait or aspect of me, and another one will have a different aspect, and so on. And it's
Why
you
are
have the
you so
positives
much
and the
like
negative.
me?
Yeah. So have you experienced that kind of a thing as well?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. Each in their own way. It's so funny you say that, because I was just reflecting that the other day with my youngest daughter, and just she is so much like me in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
And I even told her, I was like, I know who you are because you're very much like me. You cannot get anything past me. I know exactly what you're doing. And I explained to her what she was doing, and she was like, how do you know that?
Yeah.
Like, I had a good, I had a hand in making you. Like, I know, I know who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what about, we touched a little bit on health, like you were in sports in high school. What are you doing these days? What's your kind of like healthy regimen, like as far as food and exercise and whatever else that you consider health?
Well, my wife cooks really well. She's very healthy, and we eat really, really well in comparison to, a lot of people we know. We don't eat out a lot. I pack my lunch most days, instead of eating fast food or going to QT, and so as far as exercise regimen, I have not been doing a lot of exercising. I had some old military injuries that I'm currently working through, namely with my back. That's probably the biggest thing, which is kind of transferred to other areas of my body. And so I've kind of been down and out as far as that. But thankfully, I'm really active. As a home inspector, you're walking a lot, you're crawling, you're sweating, contracting same way. And that's part of the reason I probably keep hurting myself, is because my job is very active. I can't not bend over and pick things up. Now I've got a back brace, which I use. But struggling to work with the VA, I should say, to get the care that I need so that I can get back out and do what I really want to. I mean, I could still go out and run 3 miles without training, but I'm going to be sore for a few days. So I don't smoke. I drink a little bit, but not heavily. And, I've never smoked. And so my cardiovascular health is really good. So I can tend to pick up and kind of do whatever, and I can play with the kids and do the stuff. But, when it comes to like, picking things up and putting them down. May have a limited capacity to do that.
Yeah.
So
Was it Arnold Schwarzenegger or somebody said in one of the movies, pick things up and put them down?
yeah, I think it was a spoof on Arnold Schwarzenegger. I
Oh,
think
okay.
it was
It wasn't a real
from
one.
Saturday Night Live.
Okay.
I want to pump you up. I don't know if you remember Hans and Franz. I think that's who. Yeah, it was Hans and Franz. I can't believe I remember that. Oh my gosh, I want to pump you up. I pick things up and I put them down.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Check that out on YouTube. That's hilarious.
Yeah. So you also mentioned you do like campfires. Was it weekly? Like what's your
Yeah.
social life like today, and how do you utilize it for your lifestyle?
Yeah.
And so on.
Yeah. So kind of through the message that I've learned through the Outpost, Wild at Heart by John Eldridge, and kind of just my own self-discovery and allowing God to heal wounds in my life, I've been able to find out what makes my heart come alive. And one of those things is men's ministry. And so I started this fire pit with Joey Blanchard. But we went to the Outpost one time, and he was doing like a monthly thing kind of through COVID and like 2021. I think it was just like the fall of 2021, on the way home, or maybe even during the Outpost, but we talked about it on the way home. I felt God saying, we need to do this every week, because there's so much life that happens in 1 week. And so waiting a month to talk to your brother, or your brother from another mother, is too much. And so started doing that and have been consistent, and don't miss many Mondays. Maybe there's a holiday on a Monday or whatever, we won't miss. If I'm out of town, one of the guys will usually step up to take over. So social life, that's kind of my social life. And my kids are young, so a lot of my social life is around what they're doing, of course. So like right now they're doing swim club. And so like every day is swim lessons, and then Monday and Thursday is swim meets. And I'm doing that. It's awesome. It's fun.
Yeah.
And what I found that I really have to fight for, and I don't have it all figured out, is continuing to date my wife and making sure that we go out and do the things together and alone. But also what I'm learning is that like it doesn't necessarily have to be going out and eating and spending money. It could be a walk around the neighborhood. It could be just sitting and talking. And so I haven't figured out a great rhythm with that. Working on it, but haven't figured out a great rhythm. But social life is fine. It's just not like I go out every weekend and party or whatever. I'll have a man night and we'll go and do some stuff. My wife actually just told me she was doing a ladies' night coming up. And so like we try to make sure that we make time to do those things and fun things, and we're both working on ourselves, and we know that those things are important. She realizes that it's more important for me than her, because like she's more of an introvert and she's cool with staying at home or having like one or two friends that she really connects with or talks to. But I'm more of a social butterfly and I want to be out, but it's not like we're going to the bars or anything. It's like we're going to go and, go to a game or go watch even a game or whatever. So, yeah.
I think it's important for people to understand that we're all different, and there is a big difference between introverts and extroverts. Because a lot of times people view other people through themselves.
Yeah.
They're like, if I have these tendencies, like if I'm an introvert and I like to stay home, then well, everybody should be that way. Or if I'm an extrovert and I go out, and why aren't you going out or want to go out or whatever? Like we're unique, and it doesn't mean that we don't have to do or we shouldn't do those things. but we just need to understand each other better.
I think that's really great, what you said, because like a few years ago, I was going through another season where I didn't really feel like I had any true friendships.
Mhm.
And I think I told you earlier, I had really great friendships growing up. I even had great friends at Purdue. I don't really talk to them much anymore. We're still friends, but like my three friends, my group of five buddies that I grew up with, I was really spoiled to have that. I remember literally crying out to God, like, why can't I have any friends? Like, why can't I have any good relationships? And he very softly spoke back to me and said, to have friends, you need to be a friend.
Mhm.
And what that looks like is I have friends that are introverts. I have friends that are extroverts. And it's just like in a marital relationship, you complement each other. I pull the introvert into a little bit of an uncomfortable space. The introvert pulls me into a little bit of an uncomfortable space. But you have to be willing to do other things that you don't necessarily like to do,
Mhm.
which is part of the reason I did the Man Venture thing, because I wanted to be open to what other people wanted to do and kind of figure out. Maybe I didn't like it, but at least it was an experience and I did something that they liked to do,
Yeah.
right? So, yeah, it's a really good point.
Yeah. Um, what about kind of financial health and wealth? Like, what have you learned through your years of living as far as finances and what kind of tool that is and how to manage that tool and so on?
That is another area that I wish that I had better training in. Um, my parents were of the mindset that, like, hey, when you go to college, you need to get a credit card and start building credit. Now, I'm not of necessarily that mindset, even though you do need credit for things. You know, there are people that don't, Dave Ramsey, for example, like he doesn't use credit. He buys everything with cash. That's difficult. I realize that. But I wasn't set off on the right trajectory with the right mindset of how to save,
Hmm.
really even how to balance a checkbook. And so I've had to really learn all of those things as I've come along. Accounting, I failed it twice at Purdue. That just my wife's an accountant. I just am not wired that way. I have a really tough time understanding how these numbers are supposed to line up. And so to compensate for that, I've had to hire other people, right? And I think that's okay, but
Yeah.
to be a business owner is really, really tough to not understand numbers. So I've had to fight to do that, and I still have to fight to do that. And so financially, I would say not well. Learning as I'm going. Um, didn't really learn a lot about what it was to invest and the different investment options, and what that looks like. Didn't really focus on what life might be like if I'm retired. I think there's a healthy balance, because I think a lot of people do invest. They put a lot of money away expecting that they're going to live to see retirement age. But then you have people like me who have spent most of every dollar that we've made, and then I may be working for the rest of my life. So I don't know. We're catching up, but we were both behind the eight ball, and a lot of it was just because we just didn't know what we didn't know,
Mhm.
and have had to kind of fail forward essentially. So if I were to give people advice, I would say definitely pay more attention to your finances when you're young. And if you are in school, you can get QuickBooks training, for how to learn how to do QuickBooks. There are online courses. There are things that you can learn on how to manage your own personal finances. And it doesn't have to be the Dave Ramsey program. There are other programs that are out there. One program I was exposed to, and I would love to mention this for business owners, is Mike Michalowicz. You ever heard of him? He wrote the book called Profit First.
Okay. I've heard of the title.
Amazing book. Completely changed the way that I do my business finances. The whole premise of the book is like, you're a business owner. Why aren't you making any money?
Mm-hmm.
You get to the end of the year and your accountant's like, hey, you had a great year. You made $20,000 this year. And you're like, you look at your bank account and you're like, well, I don't see $20,000 in there. Why? Because it's all in the numbers in the accounting that I don't understand. Yeah. Right? And so like his book teaches you to pay yourself first. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't necessarily mean, $10,000 or $1,000. But it could mean like, hey, I'm going to take the money that I receive, and for me, I tithe. So like the first tenth is going to go to the church. But everything after that, I'm going to pay myself first. And that doesn't matter if it's $10 or whatever. But the book's revolutionary because you say, all right, well, I earned this amount of money. I'm going to take a percentage of that. And so you set it up in percentages. So it could be a 5% or 10% or whatever. Of course, you want to increase it over time. But eventually what you get to is you get this little kitty built up, and then you have a little bit of money. And even if it's only a few $100s, you can say, honey, we're going to go to a really nice restaurant and eat dinner on our business. And you reward yourself for all of the hard work. So you pay yourself first, but then you have your operations and you have your taxes and you have all these categories that they teach you to set up. And so it's kind of in line with Dave Ramsey, mm-hmm. But it was revolutionary for my business because I think so many business owners go out of business because they're like, why am I doing this? I'm not making any money. Well, you are. You just have put it in different places and you can't really feel it. It's not tangible.
Right, especially when you have cash flow, the cash flowing mm-hmm. through the account. You have deposits, you have expenses you're paying, you have final payments that you're trying to collect and all of that. So the cash is like flowing through. So like being on top of your numbers, mm-hmm. like job accounting, all of that, like it's very, very important.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned your faith mm-hmm. A little bit. How did you come to faith? Like, how did you come to that decision?
I was at an FCA camp in Estes Park, Colorado, and heard the call there. They did an altar call, mm-hmm. and I just...
How would you describe your life before and after? Like, what's the difference? Is there a difference?
Yeah, I did feel a difference. I think it was kind of short-lived because it was, it was before my senior year. So it was like, I guess the summer of between my junior and senior years. Felt like my faith was pretty good during that senior year. But then I went to college. And so, got into things that I hadn't gotten into and all the things. Before that, I was raised Episcopalian. So frozen chosen, we don't pray except for at dinner time, mm-hmm. And at church or at bedtime. And everything's memorized, the sermons don't really impact me. It's whatever. It's like, oh, well, you got to be done in 20 to 30 minutes or people are going to get restless and upset, mm-hmm. So, didn't really have a lot of, one of those questions that were asked is like, how did you view Jesus? The Jesus that I knew was literally a picture of Jesus holding the lamb on the wall. Like kind of meek and mild, mm-hmm. not the warrior that I know he is today. And so very, very different faith. I didn't really come into my faith that I have now until after I met my wife. I started to deepen that faith with her church that she was in, as a Presbyterian church. Started to get more involved. Did some groups and stuff. And then we started going to Elevation, and we joined a couples group. I started serving, really started deepening my faith. But then we joined Elevation Rock Hill, or Riverwalk started, and we moved down. Well, we were already living there, but we transferred campuses, and I met Ryan Simmons. I don't know if you know him from the Outpost, but he's the godfather of men's groups in Rock Hill. Mm-hmm. And so he was like the only men's group leader at the time I joined his group, and got introduced to this Wild at Heart message. And it completely blew me out of the water and changed my mentality for who I was as a man and where I was supposed to be and how I was supposed to operate. And that journey in my faith has totally deepened since that time. So like 2012-ish or so. So really only like 12 years. I mean, really chasing after God's heart. So
it's one thing to be saved, but it's another thing to live it out.
Yeah. I mean, right? Great. You made that decision, but what's next?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, people raise their hand like, yes, I'm making a decision. That's great. But your car's still busted in the parking lot. Your marriage is still in shambles.
Yeah.
God's got it. You made that decision. Your eternity is secure, which is great. But you're still living on earth that's ruled by someone who hates you, and wants to destroy you. So it doesn't, I don't think it gets easier. If you have faith in Jesus Christ, life is not easier. It's harder, but it's worth it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So you mentioned like different jobs you've had in construction, kind of coming from Indiana. You were working for a national builder at that time, but then got laid off and found a job here. What was that transition like as far as the career, and kind of like pick up the story from there within that career?
Yeah. So started out with them actually in warranty. Mm-hmm. So literally learning how to take apart a house that was built poorly and put it back together. That's kind of how I started out. And actually there was a period once I moved here, because I was transferred to do the same thing here basically. Mm-hmm. There was a period of time where we did what was called special ops warranty. And so this was like houses that were like plus 10 years old. Mm-hmm. And had major issues that didn't really present themselves, but were structural in nature.
So you were part of a SEAL team.
Basically, yeah. That's my only claim to doing anything special ops. So yeah, did that. Learned how to not build a house.
Build a house.
Yeah, exactly. Or to not build it the right way.
Okay.
Yeah. Towards the end of that career, before I got laid off again, I did start to do some project management, but not a lot. And then getting laid off again, I didn't sit at home and collect a unemployment check. I immediately went out to do work for myself. So I would just do whatever I could do to make ends meet, because it was really tough for anybody in the construction industry that time.
Was that 2008?
2008.
Okay.
Yeah. Actually, it was December 2008, so 2009.
Yeah.
I would literally go pressure wash. I would go knock doors and ask people if they wanted me to pressure wash their house. We at one point even would know when trash day was, and we would drive around and we would find stuff that people had discarded off the side of the road. And I'd fix it up and I'd sell it on what is it, eBay or what was the other thing?
Craigslist.
Craigslist. Yeah. Now Craigslist is scary. So
Yeah.
anyway, whatever I could do to make money, basically. I don't remember. I really don't remember how it happened. I wish I could, but I I got linked up with a guy who owned a modular home building company in Lancaster, and he hired me on as their construction superintendent. And so I started doing that. Driving all over North and South Carolina, mainly South Carolina, to get lots prepped, land clearing, septic installation, well installation, foundations built, managing the process of bringing the different boxes, modular boxes to the property and setting them up and putting them together. Really, really kind of a cool process. And did that for a few years. Ended up, I would say 2011, big hailstorm came through. Ended up doing probably only a couple months with a company selling roofs before I went and got my own contractor's license and started doing it for myself. So did a bunch of roofs in 2011. It was great. It was a great year. Started doing a little bit of contracting, some smaller jobs. I landed like $150,000 remodel job, which may not seem like a lot of money, but I was 20. Oh no, I guess I would have been 32-ish or so, but I'd never made that kind of money before.
But that was just the price of the job,
Yeah,
not
exactly.
what you made.
Exactly. And so, like, not really knowing much about anything, this guy literally took advantage of the fact that I was a Christian and a veteran, and he said he was too, and I'll take care of you. And I believed it, and ended up losing like $13,000, or him not paying me $13,000, and basically put me out of business. But God, I literally met. Do you know John Yaden from Outpost?
Yeah. John, right?
John Yaden.
Yes,
Yep.
yes.
Yeah. John served with me at Elevation, and I was out front greeting, and he did security, and I was talking to him about whatever, and he asked me what I did, and I said, well, I don't, kind of did the contracting. I don't know if I'm doing it anymore. That was like a Thursday was when I parted ways with this guy. Met John on Sunday. Monday, basically, with almost no interview, started work for True Homes, and was a construction superintendent for them. Got promoted to the warranty manager position because I had that warranty experience. Didn't do very well. I grew the team, but didn't do well in other aspects, and so I was put back out into the field. Kind of a blow to my ego, honestly. But went back out of the field at doing as a superintendent again, quality inspector, and then 2016 October. Well, I guess I left True, went to another home builder who will not be mentioned. That I was there for like 6 months, and it was terrible. And I left them and started my inspection company. I hated home inspectors. Hated them because they would kill my deals. And so I was like, I can do this better. And I do.
Yeah.
So yeah, been doing home inspections, and then as like from 2020 on, since the housing market's kind of gone back downhill and, interest rates have gone up and people are unsure of what they want to do, that obviously affects inspectors because if things aren't being bought and sold,
There's less
we have less
to
work.
inspect. Yeah.
So I've leaned back into my contracting company, and have been pursuing that pretty heavily, along with this other thing that will not be mentioned yet. So we'll that's kind of where I'm at.
That's the history.
Yeah.
What's through your years in construction, what are a couple like highs in terms of things that went great and maybe some lows of what didn't go well, like some stories that you could share?
Well, I said I built a team when I was a warranty manager. Went from 2 guys to like a team of 15, and kind of restructured things with the way that warranty was ran, and feel really proud of that. They still essentially follow that model today. It's bigger and they've expanded it, but feel really proud of that. That was really cool. I mean, lows, I kind of mentioned, the like losing the $13,000 basically. And I ended up actually forgiving the guy of his debt. Like that winter, I was at home for Christmas and I felt God say, you need to forgive him his debt and just walk away from this. And I did. I wrote him an email. I was like, hey, just want to let you know I'm forgiving you your debt. Like, I'm not going to pursue any legal action. I'm just done with this. So good luck. And God paid off all that debt. We never went hungry. And, but even the lowest times, God showed up, and showed out, really.
Yeah. What would you tell somebody who's potentially thinking of getting into construction, as far as advice or insights? Or
Do it. The younger, the better.
yeah,
Get apprenticeships, get internships, knock on doors of people who own small businesses. I would say if you're going to try to look for a bigger company, that may not be the best route to go because they may not have the training programs or may not necessarily want to invest. Some of them do, but I would say the small to medium businesses really invest and have the time and want to really, really provide good customer service, and you're really doing the thing rather than just being more of like a customer service person who happens to be able to use a computer and analyze a problem, but you're not actually really doing the work. If you're anybody who will give you access to how things are done, and just and this is actually a really good point, be willing to do the stuff that is beneath you. Be willing to be the guy who pulls wire. When I started at Drew, my very first day on the job, John was like, go sweep out garages. I was like, heck yeah, you're going to pay me this? I'm going to sweep out garages? All right. I could have been like, that's beneath me, man. You didn't hire me for that. I'm a construction manager. I'm going to put me to work.
Yeah.
Humble yourself and be willing to do the grunt work, because you learn a lot. And also be willing to fail. Within my company, I've got one of the values is fail forward. Some people hate that phrase. I love it because we all fail. I failed a lot yesterday. I already failed today, but I'm failing forward because I'm now putting some processes and procedures in place that will hopefully prevent that from happening again.
Right. That's the important part. It's like failing is okay as long as you're learning from it and you're, like you mentioned, putting certain things in what you do so that you don't make that same mistake.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
unfortunately, we still make similar mistakes,
Yeah.
but ideally, we want to do what we can to minimize those mistakes.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. So your company name is Freedom Contracting Services,
Mm-hmm.
and it seems like freedom is a thing for you.
Yep.
So what does the word freedom mean to you?
Well, freedom through Christ is kind of the primary thing. I'm a veteran, and so it's, of course, it's very patriotic. Got the American flag plastered on everything. You can't see my socks, but I wear American flag socks. That's actually company issue. So I give people that are on my team these socks to wear.
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of loud and they're America themed, and God bless America. And so, like, yeah. And then Braveheart, freedom.
Yeah.
So yeah, but the whole premise behind it was there's freedom through Christ. So
Yeah, that's good.
yeah.
Also, you mentioned you were deployed to Iraq. Was it
Yes.
Iraq? Anything you can share from there? Any stories? Any kind of experience?
Yeah, it was very interesting. It was a really hard year. Actually, it was more like a year and a half with training and everything. But
And this was 2003.
yeah,
Is
yeah,
it Desert Storm or Desert Storm was
that was
before that?
Iraqi freedom.
Iraqi framework. Okay.
Yeah, we were actually training in 2002, and early 2003. And so we were there in February, and the actual war or conflict, whatever you want to call it, kicked off in March.
Mm-hmm.
So we were there first wave. So it was an amazing and terrible experience all at the same time. Still would recommend people go into the military and serve if you're able to do that. Just make sure you document everything. So when you're hurt, when you're 40, the VA doesn't fight with you about, was this military related? But I got to have several cool experiences while we were there. And I'm kind of picturing it in my mind, looking across the desert. You could see the city of Ur.
Mm-hmm.
And the city of Ur, if you know, was where Abraham was born.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually wasn't really a city. It was it was literally like the remains of some structures and a temple.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of was like a pyramid, but like almost like more like what you'd see in like South America than in Egypt. And it was a temple to worship the moon god, actually. And if you know or don't, Abraham's father was very wealthy because Abraham's father sold idols,
Mm-hmm.
because idol worship was huge back then. But I got to see where Abraham's birthplace was because it was literally right there.
Yeah.
And there was a guide that was there that told us that there was this, all I remember in my mind is like this huge crevice in the ground, like almost like erosion. They said the soil samples had been done, and way down deep there was evidence of the Great Flood.
Mm-hmm.
Like seashells and sea animal bones, fossils and stuff. And so it's just like literally living in the Bible. I walked the streets of Babylon because that was near another place that we were. So just they say the Garden of Eden may have been where the intersection of the Tigris and Euphrates. I was right there. So very, very kind of cool, from a Christian perspective, even though I couldn't say that I was really walking that walk at the time. I still believed, but I didn't want to be a hypocrite. I didn't want to say that I was a Christian and not act like one,
Mm-hmm.
And And so anyway, that was without getting out, because I mean people see crap on the news, and they can make their own summations of what war's like. But I like to talk about a lot of the good stuff that was there, a lot of the relationships we built, and the help that we provided, and the families that we were able to help and build relationships there. So we supplied some schools with school supplies, and it was an amazing and terrible experience.
And you seem to, like you mentioned in a few minutes earlier, you would still recommend that people go into the military.
Yep.
Like that war and a bunch of other wars, it seems like we as citizens were kind of pulled into those war on false pretenses, right? Like weapons of mass destruction and things like that.
I have a picture of me sitting on a WMD.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for people to say that they didn't exist, I was living proof, because I was getting those jokers launched at me while I was in Kuwait.
Mm-hmm.
And we had the air raid sirens, and we had the mask, and they had different sirens for different things. And so like some of it was like, one of it was like just incoming. And then there would be another siren if they detected that there were toxins in the air.
Mm-hmm.
And so you would have to be prepared. And so those sirens went off. So for people to say that it wasn't WMD is completely false. I literally have a picture of me standing in front of one, a Scud missile.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know that it was to the level that maybe everyone was led to believe, but it definitely was there. And I definitely saw, in speaking with Iraqi civilians, there was our first duty station near Nasiriyah. And I don't remember the different sects, but there's different Muslim sects, like Kurdish and Sunni, Shiite. And Saddam was of one religious sect, and this other, where we were, was another.
Mm-hmm.
And Saddam literally rerouted the river to dry up all of the farmland, and literally made it, if you don't have water, it's a desert because it's really hot. And so it devastated that area. And so if for no other reason than to get that guy out, I feel really good about why we were there. Mm-hmm. So, and there's obviously lots of work to do. And I think, politically we can get into a lot of different conversations about, us trying to democratize different areas. But ultimately what I've learned is that not everybody wants to live in America, and people that don't live in America don't really know any different, and they're happy the way that they live. They're happy in 140-degree heat. They don't know that there's life that's like 69 degrees in the morning, whatever, and so, anyway, I go on a tangent on that, but,
what's your view on the Russia-Ukraine war?
Oh, that's difficult at best. I think that nations have a right to be sovereign. I mean, I think a lot of it again is politicized. I think one of the things that came out recently in the news was the U.S. is all in on backing Ukraine, and that's good. But almost in the same news clip, you hear senators talking about how that there's trillions of dollars in natural resources in Ukraine. And I'm like,
that's the reason.
There you go. And so a lot of that was speculated about Iraq, and I mean, obviously there's a lot of oil in the Middle East and stuff. And so I don't know. I really hate politics because there's so much stuff. I'm a drain the swamp guy. But unfortunately, you won't get anybody that will get in office that will get enough votes to for people to fire themselves.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's a really, really, um, I don't know, all that, Israel, Gaza, like all those things, like, I don't know. I mean, a lot of people say it's kind of a picture of end times, but I think every generation has probably said
Yeah.
something similar. So, I try not to take too hard of a stance one way or the other. Obviously I'm passionate about certain things, but I try to remain really pretty vanilla and just loving people because, I know Ukrainians, I know Russians, and it's kind of like, when we were attacked on 9/11, Americans started ostracizing and literally like beating up or killing Muslims in America. Like, they're literally American citizens, and we're afraid of what we don't understand.
Yeah.
And I think you could look at that from anywhere, but you put the news media in it, you put politics in it, and you look at it from only one side, and you forget that people are human. They're just trying to get by and survive when it really comes down to it. So don't forget to love people.
Yeah.
So
So two more questions for you.
cool.
One is just about your business. If you want to share what services you offer,
Yep.
what you do,
Yep.
kind of how people can reach you or contact you, and that kind of thing.
Yeah. So we have, like I said, I'm licensed home inspector in North and South Carolina, and also licensed residential builder in South Carolina. And so we offer all those services. I'm not building houses. I mainly focus on kind of smaller niche things, small kind of, done in a couple of days or a couple of weeks
Mhm.
type of thing. I'm not really getting too much into like kitchens and baths and stuff like that, but I really like taking other inspectors' lists and fixing those items.
Mhm.
We can come in really quickly and affordably to a tight timeline, because when you're at the end of your due diligence period to the end of closing or to the date of closing, it's a pretty tight timeline, and
Yeah.
you can't often find licensed contractors that can come in and do the work. And so I've kind of developed a little bit of a name in the real estate community. I've got some good followers in that community that call us pretty consistently to go out and make those repairs, because they know that it'll get done right. It's done by a licensed contractor, and we're not going to like price gouge. So yeah.
Yeah. And like, where can they find you? What's your
Oh
website
yeah,
or?
all the social medias, freedomhsllc.com, freedomcontracting.org. I mean, I've got a great YouTube channel actually, with a lot of hopefully helpful videos. I'm a little lax on there lately, but there's quite a few YouTube videos that you can find. So I'm on most all the social medias. I'm not on Twitter or X, whatever it's called, and I'm not on what's the other thing? TikTok.
Mhm.
So I guess I shouldn't say all the social medias, because that's really only Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook. So I love to connect with other business professionals on LinkedIn. I think it's a great community. So if you're just looking to offer me business mentoring services, I'm probably going to decline your request, because I get those like every day, and accounting and website building.
Yeah.
So,
There's a
but
lot
if
of
you
them.
genuinely want to interact and network, I would love to connect. So,
Yeah, that's great.
yeah.
So one more question. So what does the world need more of today?
for men's hearts to come alive.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's good. Matthew, thank you for joining me here, for
Thanks
sharing
for
your
having
story,
me.
for
Yeah.
sharing other stories that were a part of your life. So,
Yeah.
yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.